Hi, I'm Jen Fisher, and I'm so excited to be with you here today on Olympic Day 2023, a day that commemorates the founding of the International Olympic Committee. For more than 20 years, Olympic Day has been a day for encouraging purpose-driven movement and honors sport's greater contribution to the world through social responsibility, fostering a spirit of inclusion and peace, and for putting into practice the Olympic and Paralympic values of excellence, friendship, and respect. As the only annual worldwide celebration of the Olympic movement, Olympic Day encourages national Olympic committees from around the world to promote active, healthy lifestyles in their communities for all people, regardless of age, gender, social background, and sporting ability. This is Deloitte's second Olympic Day as an official worldwide Olympic and Paralympic partner, and it's part of our partnership with purpose. Deloitte is proud to welcome you to our webinar today. And today we are discussing the importance of movement and its impact on the mind and mentality of elite athletes. We'll also learn how these athletes carry over their practices as retired Olympian Paralympic hopefuls in their daily personal and professional lives. So let's meet our athletes. First, from Australia, Natalie Nat Cook is one of the most world's sought after inspirational speakers. She's also a 5-time Olympian and 2-time medalist in beach volleyball. Alongside her partner, Carrie Pothurst, she earned a bronze medal at the Olympic Games in Atlanta 1996 and a gold medal at home in Australia at the Olympic Games in Sydney 2000. After winning the gold, the pair were awarded the Order of Australia, the country's highest honor. And in 2014, Nat was inducted into the International Volleyball Hall of Fame. Nat joined Deloitte in 2022 to support the Olympic and Paralympic partnership in Australia with a focus on athlete program to support athletes during and post their sporting careers. Having played in a home Olympic game in Sydney 2000, she is excited for athletes and fans dreaming of visiting Australia again for Brisbane 2032. And I'm dreaming of that also, Nat. So welcome to the conversation today.
Thanks, Jen. It's very exciting.
We are also joined by Ian Dors, an American para-athlete. After a high school wrestling injury, Ian Dors' collegiate running career required him to cross-train by swimming and cycling. He soon discovered that para-triathlete combined what he enjoyed the most. In 2022, Ian attended a training camp for Paralympic athlete hopefuls that ignited his passion to pursue his dream to qualify for the Paralympic Games in Paris 2024. And he continues to be inspired by other para-athletes. Ian joined Deloitte in US in 2021, where he finds being a multi-athlete has helped him succeed, being self-motivated, coachable, and a good teammate. Ian, welcome to our discussion today.
Hi, Jen. Hi, Nat. Thank you so much for having me and letting me have this opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm really excited for this discussion. So I'm going to, throw out some questions. I want this to be a discussion between the three of us, but let's start, as an Olympian or a Paralympic hopeful, you are or were often surrounded with like-minded people pursuing a similar purpose. You've had resources available to you like coaches, trainers, therapists, teams, and teammates, and others who have helped you stay motivated. So I'd like to know, when you're outside of that structured environment, how do you stay motivated and connected to your purpose without that community, without that network, or have you created that in other ways for yourself? So Nat, let's start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Well, it is a difficult thing when you come out of sport and you have an environment that you know when to show up, when you're training, when what you're doing, you're sort of told what to do. Fortunately, in the sport of beach volleyball, way back in 1996, my first Olympics, it was the first time in the Olympic Games in Atlanta. So we were pioneering a little bit. We were building our structure ourselves, which ultimately helped in my transition because all I looked to do there was to recreate, obviously nothing as immersive and intensive as preparing for an Olympic Games, but I make sure I still see my physio once a month. I still make sure I continue my massage. For my mental health, I walk, I have friends that I call, phone a friend when I want to go to the movies. So I make sure there's still this level of structure. It's dialed down a little bit, but otherwise, I think I could lay on the couch for the rest of my life if I didn't have that little bit of structure.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you were human also, because we often view our athletes as superhuman in so much of the amazing things that you do. So it's good to know for me that sometimes you just want to lay on the couch also. Ian, what about you?
Yeah, I really want to piggyback off that structure that Nat was talking about. Being able to have a schedule and have that sort of plan set out for you is super helpful to stay on top of everything. But when I'm a little more away from my support system, it just takes a lot of intrinsic motivation. And, the para world is not as large as, we would hopefully like it to be. But the community is so kind and so welcoming that every time I meet someone, whether, they're in my support network or not, like that gives me a little bit of boost, and it gives me that like more motivation. Even if I just meet them one time at a race or something, it still just fuels the fire to have that intrinsic, just kind of like, this is something that I'm passionate about. This is something that I want to do. And this is something I'm going to do. And putting that all together just really helps me keep going.
Yeah, I love that what both of you are really describing is just the importance of community and building that support system around us, not only to kind of keep our healthy habits in check per se, but the importance of social connection and social support is so incredibly important to our mental health as well. So I thank you both for calling that out and bringing that up. As athletes, you have experienced many, many highs, and alongside of that, probably lots of disappointments when, competing. So when you experience a disappointment, and I think we're probably careful here to say disappointment versus failure, because I don't really think any of these things are failures, right? But when you've experienced a disappointment, like how do you cope, or how did you cope in those moments? And then what did you learn from that in order to really carry kind of those mechanisms forward into your personal and your professional life now? And maybe Ian, I'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I think for me personally, having a growth mindset has been just crucial to like my persistence and to what success I've had. Disappointment, failure, I don't really ever think that it's a failure. It's always just a lesson to be learned. And, I can be down and I can be sad about something, but at the end of the day, I try to work on my perception of it, because some things are out of my control, but they're still just something that I think that I can do better. And I have to take a step back. I have my emotions, I let them run their course. And then from there, it's like, okay, what went wrong? Why did it go wrong? What can I do better so this doesn't happen again? And, as I've gotten older, I feel like I've slowed things down a little bit, and I'm not just constantly rushing into like, oh, this is terrible. Like, this is not my fault. But like, things happen, but still just slowing it all down, taking a breath and refocusing and figuring out, all right, I'm going to do better. How do I do that? And that has helped me tremendously just move through all the highs and the lows together.
And do you feel like, so I'm sorry, Nat, go ahead.
No, it's inspiring, Ian. That's we use a phrase called discipline your disappointment. So there is, when you're striving to be the best at anything, in daily life, with your family, with your friends, how do you make sure that when it doesn't go to plan, because we all have these great ideas in our head, we have big goals, we have big dreams to be Olympians or Paralympians, and it doesn't often go to plan. I mean, you write it out nice and neatly and you think this is good, and then first step and you step in the mud. So you have to discipline that disappointment, which means, for me, it means taking my attention to something else. So distracting what I'm in, really looking up, having a look at the blue sky, realizing that life is not so bad. And what I played was a game of beach volleyball with a ball in a sand pit, right? And so I had to remind myself to turn and look at the ocean and just try and work out every day how I can be a little bit better than I was yesterday. Doesn't always mean it works, but it's the mindset that Ian talked about, the growth mindset, that enables you to, we even used to call it bettering the ball. So how do I make the next movement better than it was before? And it constantly allows you to keep forward facing, to keep an eye on the goal, an eye on the prize. And that's inspiring and helps me bring that intrinsic motivation.
And I love that both of you talked about growth mindset. Is this something that you feel is just an inherent skill that you had as a person, or is it something that maybe the sport forced you to develop, or is it something that you kind of intentionally worked on over the years?
I could take a first stab. I think for me, I was a curious child. I was always, how does this work and why does it work this way that it does? And I think that curiosity helped, and having a good support system that helped foster, that curiosity. But also for every setback, you can take two roads. You can be like, you blow it off completely and then you're going to be right back where you were, or you can take a second and learn from it. And for me, like, I want to be the best. Like, I want to compete. I want to be the best version of me that I can. And I'm not ever going to achieve that unless I take a step back and I try to actually improve myself. So I think it's a little bit natural, but I think it was also one of those things that over the years where it's like, all right, like, I can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Like, that's insanity, So
yeah, I definitely think you can work on it. It does take practice. It takes more practice actually than hitting the ball or riding the bike or swimming. Physically, the mental application and the emotional application takes a lot more effort because you can't see it, right? Yeah. So you can see your skill getting better, but can you see your response or reaction to something that doesn't go well? And that when we watch sport, you can tell when someone throws their water bottle or throws their racket or like time out. We used to time out. You can tell by their body language that they're not doing well internally and managing that system of physical, mental, and emotional and spiritual balance. And that's something that takes the most practice. And it starts by just sitting with yourself, because it is all internal, and taking a breath and watching your thoughts race by. Like, when I'm under pressure at an Olympic final, the thoughts and the things that hit my head are way quicker than when you walk up a mountain or by the river. So trying to balance that and trying to bring some of that peace at high pressure moments is what the growth mindset is all about as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that was really powerful and inspiring, and leads really nicely into my next question. So, over the past several years, there's been a recognition, or a more kind of vocal, visible recognition of the importance of mental health for professional athletes. Obviously, we've seen some athletes courageously choosing to step back during competition to focus on their mental health. So have either of you had moments where you needed to step away from your sport and focus on your mental health, focus on self-care, whether it's injury, lack of motivation, or just your own personal well-being needs? And how did that impact you in the moment? And how do you feel like that impacted you long-term? Because I think that something like that is so connected to what you just talked about related to growth mindset, recognizing that you might need to take that step back, even though it's probably a really hard decision to make.
Well, I mean, Ian will speak to it at a different level, but a physical injury for me was the first time I had a knee problem. I had to go to the surgeon and have it looked at, and that stopped me. You physically, it's easier to be stopped than when you have a buildup of mental pressure, a buildup of stress, because back in the day, I feel really old with Ian here as a youngster, but back in the day, we were encouraged or forced to push through it. So anything mentally that didn't feel right, you just put it aside, get on with it. Really was the mindset back then. But really now, seeing that transition and through 5 Olympic Games is a long time. You really got to take time, take stock, take breath for yourself and understand that, hey, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right, and have a rest. So by the end of my career, so at the start I had to push through anything mentally that didn't feel right. By the end of my career, I could put my hand up and say, look, not here today. Don't feel like I need to be here today, and have a rest. Now, I don't think I could have done that during competition, which is what we've seen recently of some athletes choosing not to put themselves in that position. But maybe because that's a team sport as well, and they had other people to fill the gap. In my sport, there were two of us, and if I left, it was over. So maybe that's why it was a little bit more of, well, I have to do this not only for myself, but for my teammate, and we can help each other together. So it's changed a lot, and I really do think honoring your mental state as importantly as your physical state is going to be the key to future well-being and happiness.
Yeah. Ian, you want to weigh in there?
Yeah, I think Nat hit it on the head with just that transition to how important your mental is. And in sports, in my experience, especially I feel like in endurance-based sports, that, mentality is 80% of the game. Like, a lot of people are in really good shape, but if you're not mentally there, then you're not going to be able to compete on the level that you want to compete at. So that is something to take just as serious as your physical well-being. And, I grew up in an environment where it was similar to Nat, where it's like, you don't feel well, like mentally, like who cares? Keep going. You just push. Like that's the name of the game, is you just push yourself. And it served me well, but it's also been very problematic. And it's something that, I'm still working on, is kind of disconnecting the two and being able to say, if I don't feel mentally well, like it's okay for me to take a step back. I don't have to push through this all the time. I don't have to sell 100% of my body to this if my mind isn't there, because maybe in the long run, I shouldn't be pushing myself, because if I'm mentally drained or if I'm mentally not there, then that means that there's probably a lot of stress in my system. And being so injury prone with my injury, I can't just push through this to the level of what I feel like maybe I like mentally, like I know I can keep going, but my body can't keep up with that.
Yeah.
So taking a second to just take a step back and understanding that, if I got a lot going up here, that means that there's probably something else going on and my body is just crying for a break. And I don't need to push that to the point of risking things for long term, because unfortunately, things don't work 100% like they used to. So that's also been a lesson to learn of, where's that line between pushing yourself and taking the foot off the gas pedal a little bit. And it's different for everyone, and it's an ongoing thing. I'm not perfect. I'm still learning every day. As Nat said, I think earlier, we have these plans. They hardly ever, come together as we'd hope. So just understanding that and working through that.
Yeah, and Jen, I think Jen too, when you're an Olympic or Paralympic athlete, it's a 4-year cycle.
Yeah.
So everyone in the world gets to see these amazing athletes. You talked about superhuman feats once every 4 years, but preparing for that 4-year moment, you have to be able to sit down, sit on the couch, walk away, go out with friends, have rest and have recovery. You have to plan that in. So often what you see on the TV is that slice of superhumanness that we've spent 4 years of ups and downs and crying and giving up and stopping and slowing down to be ready for that moment. So we're not like that all the time.
No, and I appreciate you both so much, Ian, especially you. I mean, for sharing that, just because Nat, I think you're right. We see this on the television or at the games every 4 years. I think logically in our brains, we can probably think what it took you to get there, but that's not how we think about it or process it. And I just think it's such an important message for everybody, to in so many ways think like you all do as athletes. We're all going to have those ups and downs of life. We're all going to have those moments where we cry and scream or jump up and down with joy or just need to lay on the couch. And we need to give ourselves the permission and the space to do that, because all of this is a journey, right? Whether it's the 4 years leading up to the Olympics, but it's, we're all on some sort of journey in our lives. So I just think that that's such a powerful message that I'm so grateful that both of you shared. And again, Nat, I feel like you could be the interviewer here, because you just walked right into the next question. So what do you guys do for fun, or to stay active, when you're not specifically training for the Olympics or specifically for your sport? So what does movement and fun look like for you in your life now?
Well, for me now, it's 11 years since I've retired from Olympic competition, which everyone still wants me to be Olympic. Every time I do something, I pick up a ball or run, or I said, no, that was a certain part of my life. And now I have to choose how to be active and how to be moving for the rest of my life so that I have a long, healthy life. So I've chosen, partly because of my body and my knees and shoulders and neck. Imagine diving around a sandpit for 20 years. Fortunately, it was softer than driving around a basketball or a volleyball floor. But I've chosen yoga. I think yoga is very important on many levels, physical, mental, and spiritual. So I do yoga 3 or 4 times a week, and my downward dog is getting a lot better. It's taken years, though. It has taken 8 years to get into certain positions that I thought looked easy. So that's really important to me. And golf, I've fallen back in love with golf. I was a golfer, and I'm now trying to play golf once a week. And walking, I think walking is the most underrated
100%.
activity.
Yeah.
So I walk as often as I can. I try and do walking meetings. I try and walk with friends. And I think it's really helped me to stay physically and mentally well.
I love that. And your description of the yoga poses, isn't it funny how our brain tells us that something should be really easy, and then our bodies, yeah, not so much. What about you, Ian?
Well, I definitely need to get on that yoga. I am not a flexible person whatsoever, so I should probably pick that up. But honestly, for me, anything that really gets my heart pumping, sweating, I love. I would say that I still try to get endurance stuff in. That's just what makes me happy. That's my passion. That's what makes me smile. So long walks or brisk walks, still cycling, jogging, all these things, just maybe not so intense, taking a step back, maybe going with, my wife or some friends or something where we're just doing it casually rather than I'm training. But I still really enjoy just interacting with nature. Hiking too is just, I love hiking so much. You get a good feeling out of it, but you're not really pushing yourself too much, and you get great views. So really anything that gets me just moving. I don't know. I like sweating. I like just working. Something about it. I don't know. It's addictive.
I love that. It doesn't matter what it is, right? Just do something. Exactly. I love that message. So as elite athletes, obviously you've had this incredibly profound and positive impact on society through your sport. How do you redefine purpose, and what does that look like for you? Especially Nat, you said you've been away for 11 years. So how did you redefine that? What does that look like for you moving forward? And Ian, I know you're still in the thick of it, but I'd still love to know what that looks like in your, kind of in your daily life.
Yeah, and one thing that's really I've learned over time is that it's not a destination. It's not I'm transitioned out of sport and I've stopped and I've landed here. It is a constantly iterating opportunity. So I feel like I am still transitioning, and I have different moments where I think, hey, that's something I'd like to try. And this is a key, just to have a go, right? So it's really important. Here in Australia, one of the things of our Olympic days, we've got a have a go campaign. So just give something a go. Give any Olympic sport, any Paralympic sport for people that want to. We're trying wheelchair basketball. I'm not so good at having a go at wheelchair rugby because I'm worried that someone's, I'm going to run into someone. But it really is had to pick something I've always wanted to do. So I often sat there and go, if I wasn't a professional athlete, what would I do? And So that was a question. It was another dream question. I built a beach volleyball stadium to train in. I wanted to help athletes on their next, which is why it's important in Deloitte to help the next generation of athletes have employment opportunities. So I've always had a purpose to give back to the next generation, to the green and gold jersey for us. How do I leave that in a better place? How do I help others wear the green and gold? And so it's just been following my dream off the court, but still supporting the Olympic values that run through my blood and have done ever since I was probably 8 years old and decided I wanted to be an Olympian. So it's the constant iteration, though. I have learned not to feel like I've chosen something and then think, oh, that's not what I should have done, and feel like I have to stay. Just step out just as quickly as you stepped in. But give it a good shot. Don't just, that's another challenge, backwards and forwards. But
I think that's that growth mindset coming out again, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that give it a go, attitude there, and supporting others. Definitely, I love just trying new things and always encourage people to, you never know till you try, so go out, give it a go, see what happens. You'll never know. As far as like my purpose, that's something that, I've worked on over the years. It's, something I'm still working on, being completely, injury free, not a single injury through, high school. And then all of a sudden, boom, like things change. And now I just have to kind of take that step back and think about like, what is my purpose? Like, what am I doing like here as part of this sport? And it sounds kind of corny, but, I've learned
not at all, actually.
But like spreading kindness and like patience, you never know what other people are going through. And, disabilities aren't always like apparent or observant. I was working with someone and they were telling me like how inspired they were by me. And they're like, I have like a nerve like injury, and like no one ever really sees it or anything, but I'm in constant pain and like I have all these issues, but no one really knows besides, close family members. And like that really hit home for me, of this idea that we don't really know what anyone's going through. We are coming home from work and, someone is doing something on the road or something. We don't know what is going on in their lives. So just taking a step back and, supporting everyone through all of the things that are going through their lives, and just being kind and patient with everyone around us. Because you never know. So
yeah,
spread love.
And on that, Ian, kind and patient with yourself. Like
yes,
100%.
Yes, 100% for sure.
Because the old analogy of fill your cup up first, and then others can drink from the overflow, right? So it's really important that compassion outwards, the kindness outwards, starts with yourself, and how you talk to yourself and how you treat yourself with self-care. And so some people consider that selfish, but it's not. You absolutely have to take care of your mindset, your heart, your own space, and then you can be kind to others. So it's really, really good message.
I love that. And Ian, what you said about, some things aren't always visible, right? I think of those that might, live with a mental illness or struggling with their mental health. You can't always see that. We're not wearing a sign above our head. I'm somebody that lives with anxiety, but you would probably never know if I didn't tell you, or you didn't interact or engage with me on a day in, day out basis. And so I think that that's just such a important message, that, everybody is, there's something going on in everybody's life and we don't know what it is. So I think there's memes and quotes out there that says, if you can be anything in life, be kind. and that's what that reminded me of. So thank you for that. So we're going to take a couple minutes. We don't have too much time left, but a couple minutes to get some questions from the audience. So the first question is, as an elite athlete, nutrition and rest plays a huge role in the training process, which you both have already covered. When the training for Olympic and Paralympic Games, what did you do and eat on less structured days. Okay, so we already kind of talked about structure, and Nat, I think you talked about the need to sometimes just lay on the couch, but I think this one is kind of, focused on, are there specific activities, or we haven't really touched on nutrition, so maybe we can focus there.
Yeah, I think nutrition is so important, and I didn't realize how important as an athlete, because ultimately you could at some point eat as what you wanted. It depended on age, it depended on physical output. But we would travel the world, and I would sit in Paris, where the next Olympics and Paralympics are, and eat croissants and baguettes. And if I did that now, Jen, I would be in...
I'm getting hungry just listening to you talk about it.
So there are we used to call them performance foods, and I still now I say, is that a performance? Do I need to have performance? Is that a performance food, or can I enjoy this? And that's another thing with yourself, being able to enjoy a treat, being able to enjoy something. For me, it was chocolate, or we call them hot chips or French fries, the hot ones, not the ones out of the packet. Like they were my two vices, and that was, if I was going to give myself anything, it was that on less structured days. But ultimately now, as a retired athlete, I just have to watch the calories in, and I have to, the way I manage that is eating half of what I would want to normally eat. And that actually, in transitioning, that was the hardest. I would
use smaller plates.
And I'd want to eat the same amount. So I use a smaller plate, Jen. That is a very good tip. But then I go back twice because I think it was a smaller plate. So you got to, it's a constant conversation with yourself and your goals, and just taking care of the nutrition, number one thing over exercise right now.
Yeah. Ian, what about you?
Currently, I mean, it depends a little bit throughout, like what part of the training cycle I'm in. But usually I would say on unstructured days that there's probably a structured day coming up. So probably preparing for that more intense day. I am lactose intolerant. So whenever I do get a break, I do indulge a little bit in some cheese and ice cream, maybe. I also love, sour candy, but it's all within moderation. And there is a saying that, if the engine's hot enough, anything will burn, but into your body, because it does affect you. And sure, I could eat, all my calories in a not so good way, and I'll be like, cool, like I met all my macros, like I'm feeling like I accomplished my eating goal, my nutrition for the day. But in reality, if it's not what I should have been doing, then I'm still gonna feel the repercussions of that later. So keep it all in for me. Like I try to keep it all in moderation, but definitely have a nice treat every now and then.
I love that, but not all calories are created equally, right? All right, one more question from the audience. If you could, and I love this question, but it's also such a hard question. So hopefully you've gotten it before. If you could go back in time now and give yourself advice as a younger athlete or a young athlete training for the games, what would you tell yourself? Let's go with you, Ian, first.
I would tell this is such a good question. I wish it was possible, but it's not. I would tell myself to focus sooner on a sport. Obviously, the sooner you get into something, the more time you have to become better at it. It doesn't mean you can't start later and still become the best version of yourself. But I think the biggest thing I would tell myself is to be patient. Nat and I talked about this a little bit earlier about this mentality of like just go, like push through the mentality, like anything you have going on. And I think if I had the opportunity to tell a younger Ian that like that's okay within moderation, but like learn to take a step back, be patient with the process, trust the process, listen to yourself, listen to your body, listen to your mind, and you're going to go a lot further than just pedal down all of the time.
Yeah, great. What about you, Nat? Thank you.
Well, I'm fortunate enough right now. I have a 7-year-old, and she's teaching me a lot. So I feel like I can relate it to her. And the message would be, if you're going to write, if your athletic career is going to be a book, and you're going to write a book, then why do we get so upset about one word in the book? And it's a journey. It's make sure you can go back and cross out and spell check and change, so you can review at the end of your paragraph and chapter, but approach it like you are writing a book, and it's a long game, and be patient and be kind and just give it your best every day.
Gosh, I love that. I love both of your answers. This was such an amazing discussion. I feel like we could keep going. There's so many more questions from the audience that we weren't able to get to. But Nat and Ian, I just want to thank you both for being so open with your own journeys, being so authentic, sharing your personal stories with us, why movement is vital to the way that you live, but also how it impacts our mental health, not just for athletes, but for all of us. So thank you again for joining us today for Olympic Day and for being part of this discussion.
Thanks, Jen, and Ian, good luck. Good luck, and we'll
Yes,
hope to see you in Paris.
Love it.